everyone, Amy Bowser-Tennant here, the Genealogy Reporter, and today is another episode of Genealogy Tip Tuesday. We're talking about Irish immigration. There were three main immigration times for the Irish people coming into the United States. Number one would be before the potato famine, and that was generally your Protestants and your Presbyterians that were coming over. Then it was during the potato famine, those years between 1845 and about 1850. And then, of course, there was the great influx after the potato famine as well. Conditions were bad. It was really bad in Ireland before the famine, during the famine, even afterwards. There was a great population growth. There was a lot of disease, both physical, bodily diseases, and of course, with the famine, the potatoes were diseased. And of course, that was their main staple. And so the people fell into an economic depression. Many Irish people wanted to get to America, but it wasn't really easy. It wasn't cheap, and it was really hard to get past immigration officers, especially if you were sick. So Canada started advertising, come to Canada. Come, it's less hassle, it's lower cost, we'll let you in. And it was true. It was easier to get into Canada. And so a lot of our Irish immigrant ancestors would travel into Canada and then go across the border or into another port to America at a later time. Irish men and women and children fled to North America for refuge on what we would call coffin ships. And the reason why is because these ships, they were just jam packed in there. And a lot of times they had typhus and cholera. And so when they would land, of course, they would sometimes be sent back if they didn't die, waiting to be processed. And typhus is a horrible disease, rash, vomiting, diarrhea, a high fever, and it comes from fleas and mites and things of that, bad hygiene. Cholera, if you drink contaminated water, you're going to have extreme diarrhea and dehydration. And so many of our Irish immigrants died. In fact, over 5,000 immigrants were buried at Grosse Isle, where they landed there in Canada. Most common ports of entry into Canada were these four: Grosse Isle, Quebec, St. John's, and Halifax. The most common ports of entry into the U.S., and this is before 1892, so before Ellis Island, were Philadelphia, Boston, Baltimore, New York, which is actually Castle Garden, Galveston, New Orleans, and San Francisco. Now, there were others, but those were the main ports of entry. So do you have Irish ancestors? Do you know where to start? Here are a few ideas. First, you want to gather as much as you can from the American records. That includes censuses, tombstones, burial records, funeral cards, maybe biographical sketches, different types of naturalization, citizenship, all sorts of things that you would normally look for with an American ancestor. You're going to do the same thing and collect everything you can about when your Irish immigrant ancestor arrived in the United States and their life here. In particular, you'll note that if your ancestor lived during 1900, 1910, 1920, and 1930, the citizenship questions on the censuses will be very important to you. They ask things like the year of immigration, whether or not they were naturalized, or at least that they had put in a petition for naturalization. Sometimes they ask how many years they've been in the United States. And so this will be very helpful. Notice in this example, it's a 1920 U.S. Census for Greene County, Ohio. This is Patrick H. Abbey, 75 years old. And the questions at the far right included naturalization and immigration questions. It says that he immigrated in 1858. that he is naturalized. This little NA stands for naturalized, and that he naturalized in 1860. Now, if he were born in 1845, if that was accurate, and we needed him to be 21 years old to be able to naturalize, that means he couldn't have actually naturalized until 1866. So I think that's really important. And maybe that number here, 1860, maybe that really is 1866. It's very hard to tell. But one of the ways you can determine when a person may have naturalized, a man may have naturalized, is that they needed to be 21 in this time frame. Here we have him in 1910. He lists his immigration clearly as 1860, and he has listed himself as being born in a calculated year of 1843. So now he's given us a different birth year, not uncommon. But that still makes him not turn 21 until 1864. And he's saying he was naturalized in 1860, and that doesn't add up. 1900 census, here he is, and you'll notice that his immigration, and I put it down here, he lists as unknown. Now that may be because he wasn't the one answering the questions. Perhaps it was his daughter. He lived with several of his older daughters, and so maybe one of them was answering the questions that day, and they didn't know when their father had immigrated. You'll also note that any of these abbreviations here for whether or not they were naturalized, if it's an NA, it stands for naturalized. If it's a PA, it's a petition for their intention. AL is alien, and UN, unknown, as in this example here. So where was Patrick in 1860 when he was naturalized? Well, I didn't find him in an 1860 census, but we can maybe guesstimate where he was. Here in the 1880 federal census for Greene County, Ohio, we can see that his oldest daughter, who is 14, her name is Lizzie, she was born in Ohio. And if we do a little subtraction problem, 1880 take away 14, we get 1866. So we know that the family was in Ohio in 1866. Now, whether or not they were in Greene County, we don't know. And we do know that immigration was likely before that. So we keep going back in time. In 1870, we find that Lizzie, here she is, she's 4 years old, still having been born in Ohio, and Patrick is still in Greene County, Ohio, and so we know we're getting much closer now. Well, like I said, I didn't find Patrick or his wife Hannah in 1860, but I did find that they were married in September of 1860, and they were in Greene County. Patrick was living in Greene County in 1860 when he says he was naturalized. And so I know that I can look at the Greene County Naturalization Records there in Ohio and hopefully find him listed there. Again, it is odd that he continues to give his birth date as somewhere between 1843 and 1845, none of which make him the right age to have been naturalized at that time. However, maybe he finagled that birth year and became naturalized in 1860. I don't know. But I did look through all of the Greene County, Ohio naturalization records and was not able to find him listed. So I still have a little more digging to do. I think the best clues I can get, though, are sometimes found in obituaries or biographical sketches. And in this case, I used Google, and I Googled Greene County, Ohio history, and found a book, History of Greene County, Ohio and Its People. Here in this book, I did a search for Patrick Henry Abbey, which I found. And it gave this great little biographical sketch about him. He was a native of the Emerald Isle, meaning Ireland. It says he was born 14 March 1842, so that's a year earlier than what we anticipated. Then it said that he was the son of John and Ella Mooney Abbey. He had 5 brothers and sisters. named them Anne, John, Edward, James, and Margaret, that they were all living in Ireland except for Patrick and John, and that John lived in Missouri. It says that Patrick came to America through New York, so that would be Castle Garden likely, in 1857 at the age of 15, which matches the year he was born, estimated year he was born of 1842, and that he worked at the House of Refuge on Staten Island, that he came to Ohio, the Xenia area, in about 1860. And that makes sense because he does not appear in the 1860 census there in Greene County, but his marriage record to Hannah was found on 1 September 1860. So we know he was there at least by the end of that year. Another little tidbit for you when working with Irish immigration is to remember that there were a lot of very unique name variations, such as Jeremiah was sometimes referred to as Darby. Bridget was Delilah, Bridget, Biddy, lots of different variations. So when you go looking for your Irish immigrant ancestor, you might type in their name to Google and put in something along the lines of name variations for Jeremiah, name variations for Bridget, and see what other names might pop up. Also, there is a traditional naming pattern in Ireland. The first son is often, not always, but often named for the father's father. Second son named for the mother's father. Third son named for the father. Fourth son for the father's oldest brother. First daughter named for the mother's mother. Second daughter named for the father's mother. And the third daughter named for the mother. This can be very helpful in finding that next generation back. Have you ever heard of the Irish surname distribution? Here at this website, www.irishtimes.com/ancestor/surname, you can type in the surname of your Irish ancestor and click go, and it will show you where the majority of this surname appeared. So in this case, you can see that there were 4 families in Carlow and in that vicinity. This was during 1847 to 1864. And so you can kind of determine where many of the persons carrying that surname lived and then do some more digging of those particular heads of household. You can also do a search between 2 names. In this case, I used Patrick's father's surname of Abbey and his mother's surname of Mooney, and found that those 2 names appeared in the following parishes: Down, Dublin, Kildare, Tipperary, and Wicklow. There are many other things you can do to find your immigrant ancestors, but these are just a few of the first steps you might take in finding them. I hope this has been helpful, and I wish you all the Irish luck in the world. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We need you. See you next time. Bye-bye.